Hey everybody, PSW60 here, and we've been hunting dinosaurs for a little while now, but we've never actually taken a look at them, which is kind of a bad thing. You really want to know exactly what it is that you're hunting before you start hunting it. So with that being said, let's take a look at some of these dinosaurs. This is a Velociraptor, or at least this is what the game says is a Velociraptor. This is closer to a real Velociraptor. Velociraptors were not quite as large as the game or Jurassic Park would lead you to believe. They're maybe about a little under 7 feet long, little under foot and or a little over a foot and a half tall rather at the hip, and they only weighed about 30 pounds or so. So they're probably about, say, about a third of the size that this would have you believe. Also, they had feathers. Velociraptors are a type of dinosaur called a dromaeosaurid. These guys and their larger cousins, the Deinonychus, which seem to be a little bit closer to what these were based off of in game and in the Jurassic Park movies, just due to size. They all had feathers. They couldn't really fly, they couldn't glide. The feathers are believed to be more used for balance while running, while standing. They could turn tighter due to the aerodynamics added by the feathers. But raptors lived about 71 to 75 million years ago in the late Cretaceous period. They were found primarily in Mongolia and China, and they had a couple of distinguishing features. For starters, they had the iconic sickle-shaped claw on their foot, which was believed to be used in hunting, which makes perfect sense considering, well, what else are you really going to use a claw like that for? Um, Climbing? They may have climbed trees. They also have a concave area on the upper part of their snouts. You can see it a bit in their skeletons, in their skulls. The bottom part is convex. This gives the raptor a bit of an upturned snout. It's not necessarily known, not that I could find at least, what this upturned snout gave as far as some kind of evolutionary advantage would go. They also weren't particularly fast, which is okay because they didn't really need to be. Dinosaurs that lived back then a lot of the times weren't exactly the fastest of animals. But raptors, based on their bone structure and their size, could pretty much be outrun by a small child. Next up, we have this guy. This is Dimetrodon. Dimetrodon is not actually a dinosaur. He is a synapsid, which is a mammalian-like reptile, not quite a dinosaur. A lot of the time, they're distinguished by a marking in their skull. Synapsids have a extra fossa, which is a small concave indentation, and this one is right behind the eyes on them. It's believed that this was supposed to be used to provide some extra jaw attachments that would give the Dimetrodon a little bit extra biting power. They lived around the early Permian period, which was 295 to 272 million years ago. And there's a couple of different species about them. The smallest of ones were about maybe 2 feet long, and the largest of them could get up to about 15 feet long. And they had weights ranging between 62 and 550 pounds, roughly. Their most distinguishing feature is that huge sail that's on their back. Now, the game has it as a large series of spines, but real Dimetrodons are believed to have had uh, skin going between them. And there's a couple of different potential reasons why these sails exist. The most popular theory is that it was used for some type of heat regulation. They could sit and sun themselves using the sail, and the added surface area of their body could pull in a greater amount of heat than they otherwise would be able to. The other possibility is that it was used in a sort of sexual display, similar to peacocks that we have today. It's also likely that Dimetrodon was probably one of the top predators of its time. Considering the size, it was definitely at least one of the largest. They also weren't necessarily cold-blooded, further distinguishing them from dinosaurs. This thing. This is Meganeuropsis permiana, also known as M. permiana. This is the largest insect that has ever lived. Dragonflies didn't exactly change too much over the years. You can look at modern dragonflies and they seem pretty similar in design to how M. permiana looked, that we can tell from fossil records. One thing that definitely dropped was the size over the years. M. permiana had a wingspan roughly 2 feet across, and it grew to be right around 1.5 feet long, meaning this is a dragonfly the size of a large shoe, or possibly a small cat. It's believed that they fed on things like frogs and squirrels, largely due to their size. It just makes sense for a diet of something that size. But they are definitely believed to be carnivorous. The mantis was a bit of a weird one. The mantis, as far as prehistoric animals go, didn't really change a whole lot. There have been some prehistoric mantises found, but they really weren't any different, even in size, from our modern day ones. The most recent ones were found to be about 86 million years old, and they're pretty close to the size of mantids that we have today. They found a few encased in amber. What is strange is prehistoric cockroaches had a large amount of mantis-like features, making them vastly different from the cockroaches we have today. Prehistoric cockroaches could stand up on their legs a little closer to how mantids can. Their legs were spindlier, longer, a little more rigid to hold up the weight, and their heads were also on necks. Modern cockroaches can't really turn their heads very easily, but prehistoric ones, being attached to a neck, had a much greater range of motion. Now, they still weren't quite the size of the mantis that they have in game, that's just a big mantis. And it might not be based on the prehistoric cockroaches at all, and it might just be there because it's a big mantis. Lastly, we have the beetles. Beetles were bigger back then. The end. Good hunting.